Okay, thank you everybody for joining. Appreciate your time. So this is the second of a three-part webinar series covering automated documentation, intelligent change management, and compliance. So today we are going to give a quick overview of intelligent change management and what that means. I will then pass it over to my colleague who is also on the line with us today, Garnet Bellick. And Garnet's going to give you a product demonstration, so he'll walk you through some of the key elements of our intelligent change management tools and show you how you can use them to help you in your business. He'll then pass it back to me for a quick summary, and I will answer any questions that might have come up throughout the presentation. So feel free to enter them into the question box at any time. If we can, we'll cover them on the go, and if not, we'll do our best to answer them for you at the end of the presentation. So for those of you who are not familiar with Strongpoint, our mission here is to provide our clients with stress-free system documentation, change management, and compliance. This being the second of the three-part series, today we're going to cover change management, or as we call it here at Strongpoint, intelligent change management. And so what does that mean? In the first session, we talked a little bit about automated documentation and how in a matter of a week with only an hour or two of your time, you can have the best documentation that you can imagine. But it's not just about having documentation, it's about using documentation. And our system really helps you do that. And so for us, it all starts with automated policies and processes. And don't think of this as being overly complicated. We're just looking to put in place policies that are sensible and understandable that will help you in your day-to-day work to mitigate material risk. Now, from there, we start looking at automating some of your processes by doing things like automated impact and risk analysis, or streamlining your change management and change approval processes, whether inside Strongpoint exclusively or while integrating with other systems such as Jira and ServiceNow. Now, once you've got those in place, you're now in a position where every one of your changes is matched to a relevant policy or change records, and it puts you in a position where at any given time, you can show all of your compliant changes as well as a summary of all of your non-compliant changes. And so this is a really key concept, and it's not just about having policies in place, it's about having policies that are then reportable, where at any given time, you can have really reporting on your changes by policy, approval request, process, object type, or by other key metrics. And hopefully that's really what Garnet's going to show you today, is how you can go from the first part where you're just starting to implement these policies all the way back to the point where you're now in a position to show that they are being followed. So I know that was a very quick introduction, but from here I will pass it back over to Garnet, and Garnet's going to start off with a quick summary of what we saw in our last session, and he'll move quickly into focusing more specifically on the intelligent change management portion.
Thank you, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. Again, welcome to Strongpoint's Intelligent Change Management, a quick tour. And before we get into the policy or the topic today, let's just do a little bit of a recap in terms of how we got to this point. So let's recap exactly what our continuous documentation looks like. So what you can see on the screen here is basically the end result of our automated documentation. So how do we get there? So essentially, if you were to come on board this week and we provisioned you and did a bundle install and click the start button on Friday, 4 or 5 days later, next Wednesday, you can have complete documentation of all of your customizations, but most importantly, all the dependencies between all objects. So on the left-hand side here, we can have a look at what all of your customizations are. And when you click on them, again, out pops what they're connected to. So are they listed in what forms, or what workflow, or what searches, or what reports, or is it a scripted object? And so to give you a little bit more detail there, obviously if we click on the workflow, we're going to see added levels of complexity. We see it's a scripted object and it's involved with these searches and sources. And just to continue to drill in, the whole point of this is that it provides you with incredibly detailed information that your team needs to resolve and, take care of issues as they go, but more importantly, to proactively avoid them. So what I've gone into here is a customization record, which is, a Strongpoint record that's created to keep track of all of your customizations. And we can see very specific details of what Strongpoint has parsed from your system. So again, we're inside a script now, so we can see the script comments that have been brought together, the affected script fields, the API calls, the number of daily script executions. Again, everything that your team needs to proactively avoid disruption. And again, all the way from raw data to our change log, you can see all the information and all the changes on an ongoing basis, which is essentially protecting your customizations and protecting your processes. Okay, so now what that concept that we're showing you here is converting your documentation into data. So let's put that data to use in something called a process issue. So what I'm going to do is basically give you about a minute and a half worth of training on what a process issue is, just to show you how incredibly easy it is to start using Strongpoint right out of the gate. So obviously we have our form here, and we just start filling in, the details of the change that we're proposing. So, we're going to make an amendment to our California customers list. And so you can assign, obviously, the name and give it a type and give it a severity. Whatever member of your team that inputs this ticket is going to give a more detailed note than what I'm doing here. But you can reference the fact that it's just been assigned and, affix it to a fixed or a target fixed date, attach it to a project. But the most important part of this is that you can actually add specific customizations, whether it be 1 or 10 or 100, to the actual process issue, and thereby determine exactly where the risk is in all of these customizations. So if I give it a quick save here, okay, what we can see is that Strongpoint has come up with the information of log changes only. And again, log changes only means this is a low risk change. There's nothing to worry about here. Go ahead, make that change. Strongpoint is going to log it automatically for you. You're good to go. So again, what Strongpoint does is that we mitigate risk on every single change that you put on the system. And our clients use this process issue as a triaging system. So as they get requests from their users and their dev team and their admin team, basically it's like, let's have a look to see how complex this change is, and we'll be able to make a decision on time and resources and be able to give really good fundamental risk analysis right out of the gate, because Strongpoint has done that all for us automatically. So the reason that we're showing this particular example is that these process issues are dynamic. So, we started off with a very simple example of a safe search that we're changing. And like I said, you can add any number of customizations into the single request. So let's add another one there to see what the impact analysis is. And so the scenario that this might happen is when you're dealing with the concept of scope creep. So, you're a NetSuite administrator, or you're the director of IT, and you want to work on this one particular project, but then you're thinking, oh, maybe we should add that change to the number of daily script executions as well. So again, because Strongpoint knows all of your customizations and knows all of your dependencies between objects, we're able to get an updated risk analysis literally instantaneously, telling us in this scenario that full software development lifecycle is required for this added change. So what's the impact to you? Well, basically it's saying that, this is a much heavier project, definitely not something that we can just piggyback on that former change that we're considering with the California customer search. It's something that we're going to have to push back to Q1 or Q2, or we're going to need additional resources for it. So again, the process issue here is designed as a triaging system so that you can allocate time and resources. You can affix it to external tickets, whether that be Jira or ServiceNow. You can even add in the web link. So it's fully dynamic in terms of being able to integrate with your existing process. So I hope that makes sense for everyone. Okay, so now we've triaged our requests, and now let's get to work and actually do the changes that we need to take care of. And so the workhorse of Strongpoint is something called a change request. And what the change request is, again, it's the centralizing change ticketing system that is smart because it knows what your dependencies are between all of your customizations. And it's dynamic in the same way that we're just looking at it. But what we want to really focus on is how it gets used day in and day out. So we can see that we have the same level of change control as in that last example. Full software development lifecycle is required here. We can also see that it's the same customizations that are being impacted in this scenario. And so what we note there is that, well, what's the impact analysis of these changes? And this becomes relevant when we're going through the approval process. So what we can do is click on the impact analysis button. And so In terms of the approval process, obviously, we sort of always think about two things. We want to give your technical team all the technical information that they're always going to need to make good, sound decisions based on, their skill in NetSuite. But we also want to give your business users all the information they need to make good decisions, for example, in the approval process. So we can go down to the Impact Analysis tab, and Strongpoint gives incredibly clear guidance on what objects can be safely deleted or modified, and also what objects cannot be safely deleted or modified. So in this example, we're given very clear messaging that this particular customization, it's been recently used, it has dependent scripts, the data hasn't been archived, and there's also a dependent managed bundle. And obviously, we're giving a listing of all of the impacted customizations here as well. So we sort of like to joke here that, my mom could make a good decision about whether to approve this or not. I mean, clearly with all these warnings and all these impacted customizations, you don't need to be a specialist in NetSuite to be able to make very good decisions with very good data to materially avoid risk. And that is the bottom line with Strongpoint, is continually to mitigate risk. And so, just to talk a little bit further about the power of the change request, it can be used all the way from, recording of the information at the discovery stage, to supporting development, to supporting deployment, to supporting deployment validation as well. Again, everything that your team needs to take it from inception to release into production. Okay, so normally I'd say, does that sound good? Any questions about that? And since we have sort of a one-way conversation here, please drop any questions that you might have into the question box, or we'll save those at the end. And so the one final aspect that we wanted to cover in terms of Strongpoint and its ability to manage your change tracking and the change control is the crucial reporting that we're able to provide you day in and day out. So we have something called a what change report, which is basically, what changed yesterday. So this is that scenario where you had, a negative result on Tuesday, and you can go back to see what the changes occurred on Monday and resolve it pretty much instantaneously. Open non-compliant changes, we're going to talk about this in depth. I mean, this is basically where all of your red flags are. So these have not been approved, and they're material changes. So, we need to keep a careful eye on these. Things like managed bundle updates, we do this because we want to keep these bundle updates away from your non-compliant changes. So we want to make sure that you have a non-compliant change report that's very clean and very straightforward to use. And basically your team can just rip through it, once or twice a month and keep things in tip-top shape in terms of cleanliness of the red flags. And same thing for resolve non-compliant changes. These are issues that have been taken care of. Compliant changes, platform change, material changes through and through. So again, we give all the reporting that your team needs to take care of your audit and compliance requirements in terms of managing your NetSuite change control. Okay, so again, here we are on our open non-compliant changes. So how did we get to here? So there's basically going to be two main buckets of changes that your team is going to experience. So the changes that you knew about and the changes that you didn't. The changes that you knew about are the ones that you put into our change request, into our smart tickets. They're known changes, they're known customizations that you're working on, known projects. And therefore, because we are able to match them all up, basically, if we discover a change in an approved ticket, then it's going to get matched up automatically and cleared. So no further work for your team. Second off is going to be the changes that you didn't know about. So someone's changing their own saved search, or maybe someone's changing a saved search that's acting as a filter in your financials. So in one scenario, it's a material change. In one scenario, it's not. So in this scenario, again, where it's a material change and not approved, it's going to show up on this report because, again, that's where all of your red flags are. So it gives your team the ability to have an extra set of eyes and ears overlooking all of your customizations and catching where all of the risk is. Almost by definition, this report shows you where all of the risk is. And so the way most of our clients use this on a week in, week out basis is that they'll have a monthly or twice a month non-compliant change report. They'll pull up this report from Strongpoint and they'll just assign these one off. They'll review them really quickly. assign them as needed, clear them as needed, and basically give your team the ability to manage those non-compliant changes incredibly efficiently. So just to summarize, we start off with having all of the dependencies between objects, knowing where all the risk is, and then from that point on, that converts your documentation into data. That flows into our smart ticketing system. And again, our change request is how you can go from all the way from dev to testing to deployment. And then the reporting process gives you all the change tracking that anyone on your team, from your auditors to compliance to your CFO to CIO to CTO, is going to need to know that you're fully protecting your NetSuite customizations. So let me turn the call back over to Paul, and we'll open the floor to questions and hopefully have a good chat.
Thank you, Garnet. Yep, that was great. So what I wanted to do quickly, just to summarize, is talk a little bit about what we learned today. And so this first point is how Strongpoint answers, if I change this, what will break? And I mean, that's a very important question. And really, there's two ways that Garnet quickly summarized for you there. First of all, there's our system documentation and the ERD view, where you can manually go through and figure out what an object is touching, or what it depends on and what depends on it. So that's one way. Now, the other way is really how Strongpoint reads your system documentation and then gives that information or summarizes that information for you, and not only summarizes the impacts, but also the risks involved. And that was in the change request, where Garnet shows you in very plain English, be careful if you make a change to this, because there are dependent scripts, dependent workflows, it was recently used, et cetera, et cetera. So two great ways to answer that question that all of our customers typically are asking inside their organization. And normally it's, hey, Bob, if I change this, what will break? Well, if Bob's not there, Strongpoint will have the answer for you, and we can provide it a lot faster than Bob can most of the time. So the second point here is, how do we add tremendous velocity to your project life cycles? And so in the earliest stages of your planning and discovery, think of what Strongpoint can do, and think of how quickly we can give you those answers that you need to quickly identify the risk involved with making changes and the time that will be required to kind of go through all of the relevant objects and figure out what you need to make sure it doesn't break. And so that's really how we can help. And so we've seen clients start to turn around projects in significantly shorter amounts of time with our tools in place. And the final point here is how to detect and manage non-compliant changes quickly and easily. And this is a really important question. And it's really, what changes do you know about, and can you prove that there aren't any others, or can you show me the changes that you didn't know about? And that's really what that non-compliant change report provides you with. And it does it, as Garnet said, it can be automated on a bi-weekly or a monthly basis, whatever the case may be. But these are really the things that you need to be worried about. Objects that, or changes that were risky and that didn't have approvals or that didn't follow the appropriate processes. And that's what that really highlights for you. So really critical, and it does it immediately for you at any time. So that's really the end of the second part. Now we've covered automated system documentation. We have now also covered intelligent change management, and hopefully you can join us again next week, where we can really wrap it all up for you with our enterprise compliance. And if you haven't already, you can register on our website at strongpoint.io/blog-home. And if you haven't checked out the blog before and you've just been registering by emails, please do go and visit there. There's a wealth of information that many of our clients have found very useful, and we'd be happy to have you become one of those. Now, if you can't make that last session, or if you've seen enough, you've made up your mind, you need Strongpoint now, please feel free to reach out to us directly, and you can contact Garnet to do that. And you can reach him at garnet.bellick@strongpoint.io. And we'd be happy to set up what we like to call a success plan with you. And really what we do in a success plan is take the time to understand your current environment, your gaps, your goals, whether it's things that you need to do immediately, or just different parts of your roadmap in 2018 as we're about to start a new year. And then once we have a better understanding of those items, then we can really customize a demonstration for you, where we can show you things that are a little bit more personalized and a little bit more relevant just to you. And we'd be happy to do that with you at any time. If you can't, or even if you can join the webinar, please feel free to reach out to us for that. And then for Q&A, we do have, looks like 2 questions. And so the first question from David is, do you need to have a process issue for a change requests? And so the answer to that question is no. You could technically skip the process issue step. As Garnet mentioned, it's a great tool to triage and kind of figure out immediately, okay, what level of risk is involved and what would the impact be and how big of a job is this. So that's one way that many of our customers use it. We also have others that use it and they actually pass process issue capabilities on to kind of super users or power users in some different departments. And so now what this is doing is it's helping feed the appropriate information straight to IT. It removes a little bit of a bottleneck by having some of that information pre-populated for them. So an example would be like if you've got a manager of sales operations and they're using the CRM in NetSuite to manage sales, and they need to be making changes. They can actually complete a process issue that'll then provide the contacts in IT with more information right out of the gate. So it saves them time. Or if the sales operations manager sees that it's a non-material, non-risky change, they can just go ahead and do it themselves and they don't even submit anything to you in the first place. It all depends on how you want to structure it inside your organization. So that was David's question. I hope that answered it for you, David. And then the next one is from Kim. And Kim asks if you need system documentation to have intelligent change management. And so yes, you do, Kim. They do build on each other. One thing that we talk a lot about here at Strongpoint is, it's not just about having the system documentation, it's about how you use it or how Strongpoint helps you use it. And so our system really does read the documentation of your system. And then that's how we automate things like your risk and impact analysis and show you, hey, if you make a change to this, it could impact this. And this is what you need to be aware of. And without that background, without the understanding of your system and that complete documentation, it's impossible for us to answer that question, but it's also impossible for you to really answer that question on your own with absolute confidence. So they do build on each other, and so they do typically come together. I hope that answers your question. And it looks like that is all of the questions for today. So all that's left to say is thank you. We hope that you can join us again. Same time next week. We're going to cover enterprise compliance, and you can register on our blog for that session. Or as I mentioned, feel free to reach out to Garnet directly if you've seen enough and you need it now. or if you just can't make it, but you still want to learn. We're happy to do a demo just for that purpose too. So hope to be in touch with you again soon, and thanks for joining us today.